Alright, so getting to the fourth and final video in this series, we're looking at just giving some advice or showing you how I go about marking my students' IAs. Just a reminder, this is not me showing you how I moderate IAs, this is showing me how I mark my own students. Now, in the previous video, I couldn't find the mark that I gave the student. We were looking at their analysis section, so they had the descriptive statistics, but they should have really been in a paragraph form here. The standard deviation was included on the graph, but no standard deviation there. They got the graph is clear and accurate. They got an appropriate test, but they were missing something, I think, showing how the critical value relates to the U value. Now, in my first marking, I actually gave this a 5 out of 6, but I would, on second consideration, I would give that a 4 out of 6. So if the student comes down a mark in moderation, I would understand that. I missed it the first time. And like I said, you know, this stuff happens, right? We can't get it right all the time. There's a lot of subjectivity. There's a lot of things to consider. But you know, the last couple of years, I always think it just balances out. You know, sometimes I might be a little bit harsh, sometimes I might be a little bit generous. There are 4 different sections. There's lots of criteria in each section. Just do the best you can, and end of the day, it'll balance out. Now, I really, but again, this is why I value the annotation process to show how I've awarded marks. But if you've got loads and loads of students, this is going to be far too much work for you to do, so you don't have to worry about doing it. Especially not for this year. You don't have to annotate. I don't think there's a separate document you have to submit. So looking at the evaluation now, I had to bring up the one that I've already marked because for some reason the Adobe was cutting off other bits for the last one. Anyway, so that's why it was because it's already there. Okay, anyway, so sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. Evaluation, how to mark the evaluation. So the first thing I'm looking for is this first criterion. The findings of the student's investigation are discussed with reference to their background theory or model. So what most students do is they summarize the results and they talk about the original study. What I'm looking for is an explanation of the results using the background theory model that they've done. So let's have a look here. Our results showed, so you begin with a summary of the results, that makes sense. Inconsistent with the original study, and that's okay, I don't really care about that. Our results show inconsistent with the Mozart effect. Okay, good. Music helps concentration. Results contradict the Mozart effect. They contradict the working memory model, which suggests that when our brain is receiving 2 inputs of information at the same time, it focuses only on one of the inputs, so we're not distracted by the other input. Okay. From this, we can conclude that the Mozart effect and working memory may be inaccurate. Now, I put a little question mark here going, wait, really? Your student summary example is going to say that the Mozart effect and working memory model was inaccurate? Of course, the more rational, probable conclusion, thank you, is that our experiment, So I would say here, they're explaining the results using both of these theories and models. That to me satisfies that criterion for the for this last section here. So again, what I'm looking for in my own students' work is that they are using the background theory or model to explain the results that they got. Okay, now, so for the evaluation part, what they are looking for, or what I'm looking for is, first of all, have they got strengths, limitations, and modifications for the design, sample, and the procedure, right? All 3. So at least 1 strength and 1 limitation of the design, sample, and procedure. Now, do they have to have plural, 2 strengths and 2 limitations, since there's a since there are plurals here? Not in my experience, no. Just 1 is fine. I mean, imagine if you had to do 2 for all. It would be too difficult, too long, too crazy. And what you would end up with is you would have a whole bunch of strengths, limitations, stated and relevant, but to explain them fully, to do 2 of each would be impossible to do. So having less but explained in more detail is really important. Now, what I'm looking for the explanation is that they are explaining the strength or the limitation as it relates to their specific study. Okay, so for example, let's have a look here. Using independent samples allows control for prevents also results. Okay, so on the varying percentages of personalities will be affected mainly by the different conditions. Sorry, I'm mumbling. You can probably just read this along, I hope, on the video. We could have control for this by perhaps using the match pair designs where 1 participant. Okay, so what they're saying is their sample might have been, their design might have been limited because there might have been participant variability. We could have controlled for this by perhaps using the matched peers design, where one participant is matched with another participant with a similar IQ or personality in a different control group. Okay, so that's good. So they're applying it to their specific study by focusing on the IQ. The sampling method we used was opportunity sampling. The sampling method was very convenient, which study. However, now when it comes to strengths, I think that's, in my mind, that's fine as long as you can have one sentence strengths of all three, in my mind, and get the top mark band as long as the explanation of the limitations and the modifications are fully developed. Because really, it doesn't make the strengths of your experiment were what you did in your exploration. So it would just be really repetitive to go over that again here. And if it isn't explained in your exploration, then it's a strength that you did without knowing. So, it's I don't really see the point in having lots of detail for the strengths. The sampling method was for, okay, however, using the sampling method may increase the chance of researcher or sampling bias, where the researcher may alter the procedures or results so that null hypothesis is rejected. Our procedure included debriefing so that people knew what they were going on. Okay, now, this is where I would say this is limited, right? Some basic limitations, because this could, again, it could apply to any study. The fact that the sampling method could result in bias, they could apply to any study. So what I'm looking for here to have a really deep evaluation is that you're looking at the specific study, the student's own original study. If I could copy and paste this onto 5 different other IAs, and it wouldn't look out of place, then it's not a good enough evaluation. It has to be specific to the methodology of this particular experiment. On the other hand, we notice that some students cover the ears. Okay, and so here they've got things like they had the music too loud, someone didn't turn over the page. So yeah, they've tried to evaluate it, but it's pretty limited, and they're mainly relying on for the evaluation avoidable errors. So I would say they've made a decent enough attempt to edit, and that's why I've given it a 4 out of 6. I would like at least one really insightful explanation of limitation based on validity here, or maybe something based on their materials that they used, or something like that, rather than just these avoidable mistakes. So 4 out of 6 for that. So again, in the evaluation, what we're looking for here is make sure they are discussing the background, the results in relation to the theory or the model. Make sure they have the design, sample, and procedure evaluated, and then make sure their modifications are linked to the limitations. So a couple of different ways you could structure it. You could have design, strengths, limitations, modification. Sample, strengths, limitations, modification. Procedure, same thing. Or you could have strengths, design, sample, procedure, and then limitations of the design plus modification, limitation of sample plus modification. But I think structuring in the evaluation and structuring throughout using headings and subheadings is really useful, and this is something I try to hammer home to my students, although you can see here they didn't particularly follow it in this case. Anyway, okay, so we've got the references. Looking through the appendices, I just skimmed through these pretty quickly, and in fact I'm going to cut this out of the original because there go your names. They definitely should be anonymized. All right. Okay, so there we have it. This is the, I'm not going to scroll through the appendices because there's some identifying information there, but what I'm looking for in the appendices especially is that they have their copies of their inferential statistics. The most you can get for the analysis section, I want to say, is it 2 out of 6 or 3 out of 6? It's been a year since I've moderated IA, so I forget, sorry, but I think it might be 3 out of 6 is the most you can get for the analysis if you are missing your inferential statistics from the appendices. And there we have it. So in total, I would have, what have I given the score, this student? I've given them a 4, a 3, it's a 7, and I gave there was a 12 and a 16. So I would say this was a 16 out of 22 IA. Generally speaking, they've tried to hit all of the requirements, right? So there's a lot of effort went into this IA, and there's just a few more places they could make a little bit more improvement. Okay, I hope the series was helpful. Sorry, it might be a little bit rushed. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but that's just how I go about marking IAs. Best of luck for this year. Just remember, my best advice is rule your own empire. Interpret this rubric. Take the time, if you're a brand new teacher, just think, okay, what are you looking for in this? and then mark accordingly. And I know it can be tricky if you've got a better understanding of the rubric at the end of the IA process than maybe what you had at the beginning. That's fine. Don't worry about it. There are more important things in life, and you just interpret it the best you can, then just make notes for how you're going to do it differently next year. We all get better as we go along. Again, don't try to see things, don't try to guess what an examiner is thinking or looking for, right? Interpret this how you think it should be interpreted. Okay, all right, best of luck.